So let's go ahead and get started. And I think why not have our panelists introduce themselves? John, do you want to start?
Hi, excuse me. Hi, I'm John Bradyhoft. I'm an assistive technology specialist with the Minnesota Vocational Rehabilitation Services.
Thanks, John.
Hi, I'm Josie. I'm a middle-aged woman with red hair. I'm currently sitting in the office, and there's a few different plants around me. I'm currently a voc rehab counselor and assessment specialist for Grand Forks, North Dakota.
I'll go next. So I'm Amy Perrin. I'm the program director for the Minnesota STAR program. Minnesota STAR program is a federally funded Assistive Technology Act program, and we serve all Minnesotans, all ages, all abilities.
And I'm Jeannie Krull with North Dakota Assistive. I'm the Assistant Executive Director here, and I do wear a lot of different hats. I have brunette hair, wear glasses, and I have a bunch of paper hanging on the wall behind me. So, and then we'll go to the next slide. Let's see, wrong slide. There we go. All right. So today we're going to talk, get an overview of vocational rehabilitation and the types of services that VR offers, and talk about eligibility and financial participation requirements in order to receive services from VR. We're going to talk about the definition of AT and a general overview of the different assistive technology categories, and then some examples of assistive technology for different types of needs that are work-related, and how to do vocational rehabilitation assessments, specialty types of assessments, assistive technology related, and then how to go about obtaining an assistive technology assessment and AT services through VR. And then I have Josie going next.
Hi. So kind of at its heart, vocational rehabilitation, the definition on this slide says assist individuals who have injuries, illnesses, or impairments to maximize their employment opportunities by helping them to develop the skills needed for gainful employment. And different examples of VR services that we have career counseling and guidance, interest and abilities testing, job training, job placement, job coaching. We also have different types of advocacy, equipment that you may need for both training or employment purposes, pre-employment transition services. So we are assisting students in being able to kind of transition into the work world or different training programs that they'd like to participate in. And also assistive technology. Voc Rehab can be really customizable in terms of how we create a plan. And also looking at, specifically what different services would best work for each individual. So you really get to be in the driving seat of the Voc Rehab plan, and then we work together in order to connect you with the different services that make the most sense for you.
This is Amy. Josie, John, are those services that were listed interchangeable in the two states, or is that just North Dakota? Sorry to interrupt.
All those services would be available in Minnesota as well.
Okay, thank you.
And then there is a Voc Rehab. I know we have some people joining us from other states as well. So even if you're not in North Dakota or Minnesota, you do have Voc Rehab available in every state, just so you're aware. Eligibility for VR services. So this is going to be on the North Dakota side. Sometimes this can look a little bit different state to state, but for the most part, this is a pretty similar across the board. So an individual must have a documented physical or mental impairment. The impairment must be a substantial impediment to employment. the individual must want to obtain, maintain, or advance employment. And I want to expand on this a little bit. So in order to be eligible for Voc Rehab, a lot of things are going to qualify under that umbrella, at least in terms of North Dakota. So for example, you don't have to be receiving Social Security benefits in order to be eligible for VR services. If you have a diagnosis of a mental health impairment, if you have different, physical needs that may be happening, an injury that's causing chronic pain, other long-term kinds of things, if you're someone who's neurodivergent, these are all going to be different areas where you would qualify. So really and you're going to be the expert on your own condition. So really what we're looking for is, talk to us about what's happening for you. And we'll be able to kind of, work together to discuss the strengths, the functional limitations, what different accommodation and services would be helpful. If you're in a position where maybe you want a little bit more information in terms of, mental, physical, impairment or disability, we can also send you out for different evaluations as well. And that's something you can work with your individual counselor on. Was there anything you wanted to add to that, John?
The next slide, I can talk about Minnesota a little bit.
Oh, fair enough.
So for eligibility for VRS in Minnesota, one can apply for services at their local career force center, where a vocational rehabilitation services office would be located. And part of that application process will include getting documentation of a physical or mental condition that causes a substantial impediment to employment. So we'll use school reports, school assessments, medical records, and we look at how that impacts a person to be employed. So when we're looking at the medical records, we look at 7 functional limitations, which are mobility, communication, self-direction, self-care, interpersonal skills, work tolerance, and work skills. So if somebody's affected in those areas, they'd be eligible for our program. We do have something called priority for services, where if funding gets tight, we assign priority for services. So priority 1 would be somebody that has a functional limitations in three or more areas. Priority 2 would be 2 areas, and priority 3 would be 1 area. If somebody is on Social Security disability, SSDI or SSI, they would be presumed eligible for services and be able to be served right away. The next slide. And then we do have something called consumer financial participation historically in Minnesota, where one will need to contribute towards services based upon their family size and income. This year we do not have CFP at this time, but that could return in the future depending on funding situations.
And then on North Dakota, we are currently using a financial participation sheet. Services are going to be dependent on income, but there's other factors we look into that as well. If you are someone who's on Social Security or other benefits such as, SNAP and Medicaid, that would put that individual at a 0%. If you are someone who maybe has a bit of a more higher income bracket, but for example, you need something such as hearing aids, and insurance isn't going to cover that. Those are still situations where we can talk about that. Our regional administrator can waive different percentages too, in order to help pay for things. And then as far as looking at assistive technology, we can always do an evaluation for that just to see where things are at.
And I will add for CFP for Minnesota, when we do have it, if somebody is on SSDI or SSI, they would be exempt from CFP and wouldn't have to contribute anything. And right now, there's no waiting list for VRS services. That priority for services I mentioned earlier, priority 1, 2, and 3. The federal government mandates that we serve folks with the most severe disabilities first. So when funding does get to be a challenge, priority 1 is served first. But right now, we do not have a waiting list.
North Dakota is very similar. We also don't have a current waiting list for that. You know, if you come in and get services, we are expediting eligibilities and getting people into plans, so we can definitely work with you if you're looking at you know, needing to get services sooner.
Okay. Anything else on that, guys? Right. Well, now it's my favorite part, the definition of assistive technology. Well, really, assistive technology, or AT, a lot of us in the game call it, is really anything, any item, any piece of equipment or product system, whether it's purchased at the store, like where anybody can go, or created specially for someone with a disability, and are customized to increase, maintain, or improve functional capabilities of individuals with disabilities. And this could mean, it could be something off the shelf, like your smartphone, where all of us, many of us, our smartphones are convenience items, and if we took them away, we would survive, sort of. But for some people with disabilities, the smartphone is the only way that they can maintain a job, get up in the morning, know what to do next. That's one example of something. And there are devices that are made specifically, which you'll see here in the next few minutes, devices made specifically for someone with a disability. And they can be really difficult devices, really complex, like eye gaze technology with a computer with speech output for someone who can't speak. Or it could be as simple as this right here. This rubber band is actually the assistive technology on these identical salt and pepper shakers. And for someone who's blind, that rubber band can help that person tell the difference between the two. And it's as simple as that. So all of you probably have a piece of assistive technology in your desk drawer right now, or at home in the junk drawer, which is where a lot of mine are. So the next one, and there are many different ways to break up assistive technology and into different categories. Federally, we use these 10 categories: computers and related devices like iPads and tablets and phones, daily living, anything like walkers and wheelchairs and stair lifts and things like that. Environmental adaptations, and that could be smart home products, it could be ramps, all kinds of different types of things. Hearing devices, it could be the devices to help you wake up in the morning when you're deaf, or it could be hearing aids, many different things like that. Devices for learning, cognition, and development. So it could be everything for people with memory loss to devices for reading and writing. Mobility, seating and positioning, could be wheelchairs, walkers, special forms to help people sit up straight in their wheelchairs. Many different things fall into that category. Recreation, sports and leisure, adapted toys could fit into that. Adapted fishing poles for someone, hunting gear, things like that. Speech communication, that's my area of expertise back in the day anyways. For anybody who has difficulty speaking, it could be as simple as a little wireless voice amplifier for someone who's very soft-spoken, maybe due to Parkinson's, and still wants to be able to work and communicate with their colleagues. Or it could be a communication device like we talked about earlier with eye gaze. And then we've got vehicle modifications and transportation, and then things for vision, which could be a simple magnifier all the way to speech output on a computer, JAWS for a screen reader.
Jeannie, this is
Yeah.
Amy. Do you mind if I jump in there?
Absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure everybody knows, so that this list of areas of assistive technology that Jeannie shared with us is a list that comes to us from our federal funders. And so both North Dakota Assistive and Minnesota STAR carry or work with equipment in all of these areas. So afterwards, if you are interested in connecting with us because you have a need in one of these areas, we're happy to show you different technology in the areas. But This is how this list was put together. The feds have determined the different types of AT and then hand it off to us and we run from there.
And what does an assistive technology assessment look like? I think especially when it's around students that come to see us or people at work, they're all expecting this test. Like they're waiting for the paper and they're waiting to write, me to ask them all these questions and then grade them on something. And it's really not like that. And we really sit down and just talk about what it is you are having difficulty with at work and school specifically, because that's what we're talking about today, and what you'd like to be able to do. And we start there, and then we find assistive technology that will help those types of things, and then they get to try it. And then there might be trials where they loan from one of our loan libraries and get to try it before Voc Rehab would buy it or the school would buy it, and or the individual themselves. And we might do this at their home, we might do this in our offices, or we might join them at their place of work. And I know we've done some in the VR offices too. I mean, I think I've done a couple up in the Grand Forks office with you, Josie. But and they're usually conducted by assistive technology professionals. And after that assessment, we don't always know the answer. Once we've done the assessment, it's like, we might be able to give you some suggestions right away, but sometimes we don't know it all and we never will know it all. And all of that technology is being developed constantly, quickly, every day. If you've ever tried to go to a link that you had on Amazon one day and in a week that link is gone, that's how fast the technology is happening or being developed. And so we have to do some research after those assessments and really figure out the needs and find the latest and greatest that will help that individual. And then we have a follow-up meeting after those assessments and kind of go over the report and figure out kind of where to start. Because even though we might have 10 to 20 different recommendations, we certainly don't want to dump them all onto someone right away. It's like, let's pick the first one, the thing maybe that means the most to the person, that's going to have the most impact, and go from there. And there's a lot more with that, but that's just a little taste of what an assessment is like.
Jeannie, can I?
Yes.
This is Amy. Sorry.
No, yes.
So a couple things that come to mind too, for me, is this is very individualized. Each assessment is geared towards the person that we're working with. Because you have a certain diagnosis doesn't mean we're going to say, all right, here's the AT you need. It certainly does not work that way. And also, a lot of times people are going to have, like, we call it the toolbox with all kinds of things. You might use one piece of AT for one task and another piece of AT for another task. And then the other key thing in my mind is this is a process that's changing. And so the AT that you use today or need today may be effective in a year, or maybe you need something else. So it's a continuing conversation that needs to be held.
That's a really good point. It is a process. And I think it's not a one-time thing. And I think about some of the clients. I have one client I've worked with since he was 18 months old, and he's now in his mid-30s. And so his needs have obviously changed over the years. And now as an adult even, it's definitely changing. So anything with that with Josie and John?
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add to this too is another part of when Voc Rehab looks at, what kind of assistive technology can we purchase, helping with that evaluation process. But that training is a big component for it and something that VR supports as well. So it can feel really overwhelming. You're looking at this report, there's a lot of different recommendations, and kind of figuring out, well, where should I start? And sometimes when you start with assistive tech, you may want to tweak it a little bit. You may want to try out different things, but you're kind of figuring out what is working well, what isn't. But we also have training available, so you can work directly with someone in order to actually figure out, okay, What should we prioritize in terms of what you'd like to learn? And then kind of creating a schedule around, what would work for you to feel comfortable getting trained on how to use all of this. Because it's one thing to kind of have the recommendation and even have the AT in front of you. And then there's also that part of like, okay, now let's practice it. Let's use it. Let's see how it works.
Yeah, I think that practicing part, especially when it's AT being used to go to college, you want to master that AT before you go to college. You don't want to be trying to master that and trying to figure that out while you're trying to take the class that is supposed to be helping you in. That's a very difficult thing. And so the timing of these assessments sometimes is a big piece of that too. So, all right. John, do you have anything to add?
I just want to add to focus on the individual and what they'd like to see for successful being able to do a task. You don't want to just give them technology and say, good luck, best wishes.
Yep.
We've run into situations where someone gave like an iPad, for another agency gave an iPad to somebody who had a stroke and didn't show them how to use it as a communication device, and came up later on, where's your iPad? Well, they threw it in the garbage because they didn't have any input. They got frustrated. So very, very important to take into account what the individual would like to see and to have them trained on it.
100%. Well, with that, we'll get into some assistive technology, and Amy's up.
All right, thank you. So the first slide that we have up in regards to technology specifically is geared towards fine motor impairments. And so the first thing that struck me about this slide was these are some pretty simple items. They're pretty low tech, the items that we have on the screen, and they're not going to cost a lot, and they're oftentimes things that you may potentially have in your home or in your office. So gripping aids, gripping tapes, non-slip materials. I'm thinking about, non-slip material, let's say for your work, you have to use a ruler, for example, and maybe you have a slight tremor. Well, if you put something on the back of that ruler that prevents it from sliding around, that can really be a game changer for you. And how simple is that? Clamps, power hand tool holders, and activators. Early on, when Jeannie gave us the definition of assistive technology, these items, clamps, power hand tool holders, things like that, is not assistive technology for some people, but for someone who has a disability who would not be able to perform that task without that clamp, it then becomes assistive technology. Electric office tools such as a stapler. Imagine if you're have to staple a big stack and you don't have any hand strength, that could be impossible for you. So with an electric stapler, that could make all the difference. Scissors, letter openers, money handling products. Those are all items that are listed on the slide. And then we start to look at some of the electronic tools and built-in accessibility. We could do a lot of slides and we could do a lot of presentations on this, but we're just doing a high level today. So Jeannie's actually displaying, if you're able to see the screen, she's got a standard keyboard. Actually, it's a little large keyboard. And then she's got a clear acrylic key guard that was custom made for the keyboard that she has. And so for someone maybe with a slight tremor and they try to type, they may hit the wrong keys. So by affixing this acrylic key guard over it, Terry, you're saying you're not seeing it. If you go to the top of your screen, there's a view options button. If you want to click view options and select side-by-side mode, I'm hoping you can then see Jeannie. Give that a try and let us know if not. If you can't, at the end, if we have time, we'll stop sharing the slide deck and we'll have Jeannie play Vanna again and show you guys some of these tools. But this keyboard that Jeannie's showing us right now, I know we've got one here in Minnesota, and I want to say we paid a couple $100 for it. So, I mean, that can be a game changer for someone. She does. Okay. We'll do some Vanna at the end for those of you that aren't able to see. You are seeing the fine motor impairments. Okay. So Jeannie also just held up a handheld device, and it kind of reminds me on the slide deck, if you see at the top center photo, it's this 3D printer. palm pen holder. So Jeannie's holding something very similar, and it's actually like almost like a piece of Velcro that straps around your hand, and it holds the pen just like that 3D printer on the screen, the palm pen holder. In the last few years, we have learned that 3D printers really can be game changers for assistive technology. The palm pen holder is a great example. You could create, if you're someone who has a difficult time opening a doorknob, 3D printers can make a handle that goes onto the door. The possibilities are endless. And if you ever want to talk about that, reach out to us offline and we'll have a fun little discussion. Also on the slide, we're looking at a spray can holder gun. So those of you who have tried to use an aerosol can, you know, there's a small button that you have to press with your finger. Here it's an adapted kind of a trigger that goes onto it, like, you know, like a gun handle almost. So it's going to make it a lot easier for someone. And then also we have got I'm not seeing the slide deck. What are we calling, or the notes, Jeannie? What is the green thing? Is that just like a automated cutting tool?
Electric scissors.
That is an electric scissors. Okay.
Yeah.
We have a little different one in the STAR program where it looks more like a scissors, but I can see where this is working. So just a great example of some low tech options here, and we'll talk more in a bit about some higher tech options. Also, though, the last two bullets are referencing, let's see, dictation, keyboard shortcuts, and key guards. So Jeannie showed us a key guard. So dictation would be accessibility tools that are on your computers, and we can talk about that in a little bit too.
And here it is. So for computer access, there's many different types of ways to access your computer. And basically, if you have a voluntary muscle movement in your body, you'll be able to most likely control your computer. And the more faculties you have, you'll be able to do even more things. And there's many different types of mice and different types of keyboards, ergonomic, small, one-handed, high contrast, and I'll show you some of those at the end here. We've got different types of settings so that you can change the sensitivity of keyboards, and also with tablets and things like that. There's a lot of different types of settings built into the accessibility features, and it's all free, it's all there. Dictation and voice control, there's add-on software that you can add, Dragon, many of you have probably heard of that, but then there's also the built-in in both tablets and computers, the built-in speech recognition. And then there's gesture recognition with cameras, and also on tablets, just with swiping and different types of gestures on the tablet screen. And then switch axis, which goes back to my comment earlier about just having one voluntary muscle, like being able to just move your head, can switch scan across the computer and be able to get you to the different functions, and it can be very slow, but still possible. And I'm just going to do the next slide here. There's different types of accessibility features built into computers for increased contrast, increased cursor disability or visibility. As you can see here, I have a giant green arrow, and I actually had to reduce the size of it. I liked it bigger actually, but it was covering up some of the things on my screen. And I just have a hard time finding my mouse, so I did that for myself. There's a lot of different types of things that you can do just like that are already built into all of your computers that you have right now, and your phones and all your tablets. There's screen reading software like JAWS or VoiceOver, JAWS for your computers, VoiceOver for your tablets, to help anyone who is blind to use a computer or tablet just like anyone else who is sighted. There's ways to change contrast, and for low vision keyboards, these keyboards on the right hand side here are 3 different versions of keyboards. I was just going to grab one here. This is one here that's actually pictured there. It's nice. It's super lightweight, and the keys are all yellow and with large black letters on them. And the ones in the picture, we got one there with a green background and white letters, and one with black background and giant white letters. And then there's Braille keyboards as well. Going back to the slide before, I forgot to mention the pictures. The lady up on the right-hand side there, she's using a Contour Design Slider Pro. We just got one of those in. And for those of you that are familiar with the roller mouse, this is made by that same company. And instead of a roller bar, it's a roller pad, so to speak. And it's, I don't know if you can see me, it's kind of like an inch wide bar with some thin plastic material over it that moves the mouse around. And and then the bar is also the clicker, which is, this bigger bar can help a lot of people, more people with physical difficulties, and then maybe the roller mouse could. Here's a picture of the roller mouse, or an example of the roller mouse. Did you have something to say there?
This is Amy. So while you're grabbing that, I just wanted to expand upon the device that Jeannie just demonstrated, the Slider Mouse Pro, is the image on the slide deck on the upper right. And the woman's right hand is actually resting on the bar that Jeannie was mentioning. So two of her fingers are on what is a bar, and if you touch it, you can press on it to get the clicking. And then Jeannie also, she can slide her fingers back and forth to move the mouse around, correct?
Correct. Yeah, and it's the same with this roller mouse here. This is the same kind of movement. It's just that instead of a bar, it's a roller. It's just more like a dowel that rolls, and which is very nice as well. And now everyone in our office has it. And what's so nice about it is it brings your hands and your whole body to center, and which can really be helpful. And I think that's it on computer access. I think I'm gonna send it off to you, Amy. Oh, go ahead, Amy.
Okay, and I just want to share. So Jeannie just spoke about a bunch of different items. And the good news is, well, the bad news is they're expensive. The good news is, though, both North Dakota and Minnesota do have a good majority of these items. I think probably most of the items pictured are all at North Dakota, and I think Minnesota has most of them too. So if you're ever interested in a virtual demonstration, or if you're close to one of our locations, you could have an in-person demonstration. Or better yet, if you wanted to borrow a device, and you don't have to be someone working with vocational rehabilitation, easy for me to say. We actually work a lot with ADA coordinators and employers, where they'll reach out because they've got an employee who maybe is trying to find something to help them. So by using the demo program or the lending library, this gives folks the opportunity to try these items out firsthand.
Okay. And then we'll just go on to reading and writing support. So make sure we're able to cover everything, as I see our time is starting to go short.
Yes, we are so much fun stuff to talk about. So reading and writing supports are also things that we have available, and we want to make sure that are, considered to folks. So pencil grips, weighted pens, alternative grips, those are great examples of some low-tech items. Text-to-speech and speech-to-text dictation. This has just really exploded in the last few years. Jeannie mentioned Dragon Naturally Speaking, which in my opinion is probably still the industry gold standard for speech to text. You can do a lot of things with it, but it comes at a cost. If a company needs this for an employee, it's going to cost them money. So oftentimes what we'll do here, and probably at North Dakota too, is we'll try out some of the built-in features. So if you're using a newer Windows device here at the state of Minnesota, we're running Office 365, and there's some wonderful built-in accessibility features that you can test out with the text-to-speech and the speech-to-text. And then additionally with your personal devices like your cell phones, if you've got a smartphone or tablets, all of these tools are in there. And then additionally, there's different apps and extensions that could be considered. Advanced spelling and grammar checks are also, I don't know about you guys, but it's a lifesaver for me. Word banks, word prediction, abbreviation expansion. So for example, you could type in OMW and then on the screen it'll appear as on my way. Or you could create a shortcut where you type JK and then it says Jeannie Kroll's full signature. So those are just some examples. Also, a wonderful new tool that we're starting to see is text and picture dictionaries. And the second slide, we've actually got an image of an example of Immersive Reader. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, but this is a tool that is free for folks who are using Microsoft 365. And also you can use it on Microsoft, the Edge browser, and then some of the other tools within Microsoft. But what is pictured here is an example of a number of features that have been turned on for Immersive Reader. So we have got a dark mode. So for some folks, it's just easier for them to read if you've got the dark mode, and then you can have the text be in white or different colors. It's also got double spacing. So again, that can help folks with reading. This particular example also shows parts of speech, grammar. So, you know, your nouns are one color, adjectives are another color. And then we've also got a picture dictionary. So the word valley is highlighted, and then there's a picture of a valley. And if you click on it, it will read it aloud to you. So in addition to someone with a disability, this could also be helpful for someone who maybe English is not their native language. So just some examples of some of the different tools that can be used within built-in accessibility. And then also, sorry, these other items. So color overlays, that's something that is just like a piece of plastic that's colored that you can set over a piece of paper. Specialty fonts, adjustable text spacing. Those are very helpful, we've discovered, for folks who are dyslexic or have visual crowding disorders.
Okay. We'll just do a little bit on hearing. There are lots of different things for hearing. Hearing protection and noise level alerts to protect the hearing that you do have, and personal hearing amplifiers. This is an example of one of those, and I'm actually going to take the earphones off because they were all tangled up, but here's just an example. And the person, instead of, not everybody has hearing aids or can wear hearing aids, and this, you just point this into the direction of the person who's speaking, or put it on your pocket in front and wear headphones, and you're able to hear at a much louder rate. Doesn't work for everybody, but it can work and can be all someone needs. And then there's amplified headsets that can do, that can amplify what's being, whether it's a TV or a Zoom meeting or something like that. Captioning has come such a long way, and especially automatic captioning. There's free apps on both iOS and Apple, like your iPhones and Android phones and tablets, and it's all free now to be able to capture conversations, and fairly well too. And then there's transcripts, like after this meeting, we'll have a transcript as well, just for example. And then there's a lot of different ways for somebody who's deaf to be able to hear and see and feel that the fire alarm went off, or the NOAA weather radio, the tornado alarm went off, or just to be able to get up in the morning is important. And a perfect example, just get up, get ready for work, you need to be able to hear the alarm. And it's a real simple thing that everybody does and probably takes for granted, but when you can't hear that alarm, you need a way. So a light flasher, and this right here is a Serene central alert, and we've got a doorbell and a clock and a bed shaker showing there. And when the doorbell goes off, it'll say doorbell. So not only are you getting shook and awake, you are also looking at that clock, and you can tell why you're being feeling that shaking sensation, and which is really nice because when you wake up, it's like, is it the door alarm? Is it my phone going off? Is it do I need to go down in the basement because it's a tornado? You kind of need to know those things. So it's a nice thing. So next we have things for focus, Miss Josie.
On this slide, there's a couple of different apps that are shown. The first one has what's called the Better Sleep app. It's showing a photo of some of the different options you can do to customize it. You can layer some of the different noises and lighting effects to really create an individualized, way for you to be able to use some of that to get some rest and some sleep. The second photo shows iOS focus mode. So this can be really helpful when you're wanting to block some of that unwanted notification and be able to kind of focus a little bit more on the tasks at hand. So some additional forms of AT that are listed include earplugs or noise canceling headphones, background colored noises to mask certain environmental sounds, built-in and add-on focus helpers for computers and smart devices. Again, being able to really customize these features to block distractions with how it works best for you. Cleaner, less cluttered working environments, including digital environments. And there's a lot of different types of focus that we can really look at. Another one, for example, if you're someone who maybe needs a little bit of additional help in terms of doing tasks or cleaning, chores, if you notice you tend to have a lot of doom piles kind of around, whether in the work setting or at home, body doubling is another example of something you can do with focus. And Think Divergent is an example of an app for that. So it's really being able to kind of customize some of these different types of apps and features. Executive functioning. So in this photo, what we see is we see someone where there is a whiteboard and they're utilizing a time timer, visual timer on a whiteboard. And it's really neat because you're able to just visually see these blocks of time and the way this timer is working. It's showing 15 minutes are remaining on 3 different tasks. Being able to have those visual reminders can be really helpful. Some other examples include, additional kinds of timers and reminder watchers, item trackers, visual planners, calendars with alerts. They have so many cool visual planners now. If the traditional type of planner doesn't work for you, they have a lot of different neurodivergent models. They have ones that are pictorial, tactile. They're being utilized in different ways. So if you're someone who might want to look at a non-traditional planner, that's another option. Task lists, written or video instructions on different tasks. And again, this is going to be dependent on learning preferences. Habit building apps. Some of these are really fun too. If you are someone who's a little bit more whimsical, or maybe you enjoy having like a pet or even more of a video game style, some of these are really fun to do. So I would encourage you to check out some of the different apps they have available. There's also color coding that you can use in different kinds of settings, meeting transcripts. These are all extra tools to help with that executive functioning. We have a couple of examples as well, including the Echo Show and some of the different Med Ready kits.
So right now Jeannie's holding up the Echo Show, and I don't know if either one of you want to share an example of how we could use the Echo Show to help with executive functioning.
I had to shut her up. She was talking.
Oh, she heard her name.
Yeah.
So you could schedule reminders, I suppose, with this. Any
Make
other thoughts?
lists.
Make lists. Yes, excellent. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, that's like it's like the minute you're thinking of it, because if you walk into the other room to write it down, it's gone.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right, and the time timer dry erase board, did you guys talk about that one already?
Yep.
Oh, you did, sorry. Next one.
For mental health, so what we kind of see in the photos here, this first one shows an Apple Watch and it's giving a medication reminder. So this can be really helpful for someone who might really enjoy kind of that tactile, on the go. You're able to wear this as a watch. If you're someone who enjoys apps, the next one shows a How We Feel app. And what's great about this is there's so many different kinds. This particular one, you're able to record your mood using different colors. So you can tap on, it shows a bubble of red, yellow, blue, green. Each color corresponds with a different type of feeling. So that can be one way to record different moods. There's a bunch of other apps where, again, they've got a lot of different ways where you can track mood, track other things with mental health, symptoms, building up some different self-care activities and things to help with mental health as well. So you get into mindfulness apps. Where these can even direct you, if you're in the middle of having anxiety, you're dealing with panic attacks, wanting to be able to figure out ways to help deal with that. Also, just mindfulness in, wanting to take some more deeper breaths, working a little bit on that self care. The mood tracking apps we talked about, and habit building apps. Medication management apps and systems. These can be used in combination with some of those tactile med kits. Jeannie's showing a couple right now. If you want to go ahead and explain that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. We have two locked medication dispensers, a big one and a mini me. And this is the Med Ready and this is the Med Alert. They're locked medication dispensers that only dispense medications at certain times.
And sometimes even having those little caps where it just kind of notifies you, did I take this med or not today? Sleep tracking apps and tools to improve sleep, breathing, de-escalation tools, especially trying to figure out, what are some different ways that I can use different techniques in higher stress situations. There's some cool apps where they'll even walk you through a script that you can use that can be really helpful. Sensory needs. So in these photos, it shows a couple of different examples. Fluorescent light covers. This is an absolutely amazing one. And what this is it kind of looks like a sheet of fabric that you can put over those overhead fluorescent lighting. They come in a lot of different kinds of patterns. So you can really have it fit your decor too, for office, school, different things you're doing. But especially for people who might have different sensory needs, fluorescent lighting, it can have noise, the way the light comes in, it can really impact the sensory processing for individuals. So being able to actually have these covers on, especially if you're not able to use lower lamps and things in the environment, can be really helpful. A kneeling chair. In this photo, it shows a student who's kind of using more of a non-traditional chair where you're able to rock back and forth and kind of sit in more of a different kneeling position. And what's great about this is if you're able to get that body moving, and you're able to get that input into that whole sensory interception with the body, then the brain can actually turn on and learn, and it can be able to actually engage in different tasks. And if the brain is really occupying, trying to figure out how to get that sensory input without that, then sometimes, more challenging behaviors can result, and it can be a little bit tough. So some different ways to get sensory input. Flexible seating options is great. There's different kinds of fidgets, and these aren't just for students. Adults can very much benefit from these. They have an adult line. They even have some beautiful fidget jewelry that you can use. Compression or weighted clothing. There's weighted lap pads. They make different little stuffed animals. Oh, yep. Jeannie's showing us an example of that, and they're really customizable. So you can use favorite characters. You can even add different scents with it. And it can be a great way to just kind of ground that nervous system. Overhead light filters and task lighting. We talked about that a little bit with the fluorescent light covers, but there's different types of lighting that you can use in order to kind of customize that for particular sensory needs. Noise canceling earplugs or headphones, white noise apps and machines. These are all some great examples of being able to kind of set up some different accommodations for sensory needs.
Okay, and I believe this is John.
Yeah. Ergonomics is very important to take into account when someone's setting up their workstation. Ergonomics assessments is one of the many assessments that I'll do at work. And the main thing is just to make sure the person's comfortable in their work station. And if they're not comfortable and they're not set up right, they're going to have pain, and they could over time have other symptoms. So one of the big things we look at for ergonomics is to have a good ergonomic chair that's not too big or too small for the person, so that they're properly supported. They have the good back support, armrests that are positioned correctly for them. If someone can't sit too long and needs to alternate between sitting and standing, we can look at adjustable height desks so they can sit for a while, and then when they need to stand, they can raise their desk up. Adjustable height desks also are helpful for people working from power wheelchairs where they need to change positions. We also look at things to make sure that the keyboard and mouse is positioned correctly. Make sure the monitor is the right distance away from the person working, and that the monitor is large enough so they're able to see what's on the screen, and that they're not looking up or down at their monitor. Or if they have two monitors, make sure their monitors are positioned correctly so they're not moving their head side to side, which can cause pain. A lot of times we'll work with different keyboards and mouse options and combine it with, say, Dragon Actually Speaking to help minimize how much they're inputting into their computer, how much typing and keyboarding they're doing. So just to make them comfortable so they can be more productive. Next slide, please. Vehicle modifications. VRS can help with vehicle modifications if someone needs transportation to work and they don't have access to adequate public transportation. We can work with a certified driving evaluator to prescribe equipment that someone would need to be able to operate a vehicle safely. So they're safely able to get into a vehicle, operate it, access all the controls, and get out of the vehicle. A vehicle modification can be as simple as mechanical hand controls. If someone can't use the foot pedals. Hand controls can run from about $1,000 up to, lowered floor minivans, the ramp, so someone can drive their chair into the van, or high-tech EMC controls where if someone's very, very significantly impaired, maybe they have an injury at C5 or higher. Those high-tech, it would be like driving with a joystick, so it's real. They're not interfacing with the standard wheelchair or the steering wheel. They're using a joystick to drive and access all the controls. Next slide, please. And some examples of vehicle modifications. On the left, there's a lowered floor minivan with the ramp that comes out the side. That's probably the most common vehicle modification we get involved with here at VRS in Minnesota. And then the picture on the right is a seat that comes out of the vehicle, and then someone can transfer into the seat and be raised into their seat and into the driving platform. Next slide. And also in Minnesota here, one of the other assessments I'll do is working with farmers with disabilities. I'll go out and look at accommodations where someone can stabilize their work on the farm. Some examples of agricultural accommodations are powered lift, a platform to get up into your equipment. There's also wheelchair lifts where you can get into the tractor or combine, remote controlled gates where one would just drive up to the gate and it would open for them rather than getting out and physically having to open the gates. Having hand controls on equipment. Next slide, please. And here's just some examples of some farming accommodations. On the top there on the left is a quick hitch. One would just back up to the equipment and they wouldn't have to get off the tractor. It would just hook up automatically. The middle top there is a lift where one can get into the tractor. And then we've done different controls. If one's not able to access controls on one side of the piece of equipment, they can add controls to the other side or hand controls. The bottom picture there is a lift to get someone's wheelchair into a utility vehicle. Those could also be put on pickups. On the bottom right there is a platform where one could get into a skid loader where they're not able to climb up over the bucket and into the cab. They can drive the bucket up underneath the platform and get into the skid loader. And farming accommodations are just like anything else. We look at what the person's limitation is and figure out what work tasks they need to do and try to make a match what technology would allow them to do that the work they need to do. Next slide. And to go about exploring assistive technology with a Minnesota VRS counselor, one would just need to they'd be assigned a rehabilitation counselor. They'd be working on an employment plan. One would just need to bring up assistive technology with their counselor. And we do have assistive technology liaisons on each team in the state. One could be available for just general questions and advice. And then your counselor can get me involved to do a number of assessments where I'll consult to identify, ideas or do an actual assessment or bring out technology to demonstrate. And we also can hire a community rehabilitation providers and limited use vendors. So we can get someone connected to the proper assessment that they would need. And Josie, I don't know how that would work in North Dakota. If it's the same or not.
Yeah, it's very similar. I think, first we can have just a very informal conversation. And a lot of times, an individual might not know what kind of AT is even out there, what may or may not work for them. So we can just kind of have that conversation of, what are some areas that, we could explore a little bit. And we could be looking at different types of AT accommodations. We can explore that a little bit further. And again, AT is really something where it can benefit so many different groups of individuals. I know I've often worked with people where sometimes there's kind of this thought, well, I don't quite need AT right yet. And there's still so many amazing opportunities there. So after we kind of have that conversation and we just explore that a little bit with you, then we would go ahead and get you connected with a more formal type of assessment with some of the different resources that we have. There's a couple examples we included where you can actually go through and see if there's different types of ET that may fit for you. And then we'll get you connected with a more formal evaluation. There'll be a report, and then together we'll go over, hey, what AT do you want to try and how can we go ahead and help you with purchasing that and getting trained for it?
Well, so in Minnesota, you want to go to this website here, and it will be in the it's People with Disabilities, Vocational Rehabilitation Services, and the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. And the link will be in the handout that you get, and you've got their phone number there and their email in North Dakota. The address is also available on the handout, and phone numbers and the email all to contact them. And let's see here. And then if you want to contact Minnesota Star, the website and phone number and email, as well as North Dakota Assistives, are also all available to you on the handout. And trying to think if there's anything else we missed, and then I can stop sharing before anything else before I stop sharing here. So we can
Well, this is Amy, and I see you were a little bit over on time. So I guess rather than going back and showing the technology, if anybody heard something that you would like to see more, just reach out to either Jeannie at North Dakota or Amy at Star, and we can also connect you to Josie and John if you guys have any questions. And Jeannie, I just wanted to take a minute to thank everyone. We're all so busy. We want to thank those of you that took the time to attend, but most importantly, Josie and John, thank you for taking time out of your day and sharing all this really amazing information about the resources that you provide to Minnesota and North Dakota residents or citizens.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure being here. And again, any questions that come up, feel free to reach out and I'd be happy to either answer them or connect you with someone who can. So thank you guys.
Thanks a lot.
Great.
You guys
Thank
have
you.
a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.